Hey, what's up everybody? Michael from RogueDeckBuilder.com here doing my deck tech portion for my card discussion article for Experiment 1. This is going to be a very fast aggro deck, which is what I was trying to do with this. Trying to really incorporate Experiment 1 into something similar to what I did with my Evo aggro deck, but my Evo aggro deck is sort of outdated, and it's just too slow now, and I wanted to speed it up somehow, and I came up with this. A lot of it was, a good chunk of it was inspired from Tom Ross's deck that he played in the past SCG Invitational for the standard portion, and quite a few of the same cards he uses. But let's get on with everything. I went over the general idea of why I think Experiment 1 can fit in an aggressive shell, or at least a creature heavy aggressive shell. And I really like Experiment 1. I've played it and played against it, and I mean, it's not an amazing card, but I think it still definitely is strong enough to at least have a chance in this type of deck where you want to be curving out really well, and you want to be playing a threat each turn. And Experiment 1 evolves along with your other threats, and even just getting it to a 3/3 opens you up for a lot more things, whereas like other one-drops such as Rakdos Cackler, they just stay as a 2/2 and they can't block, and it's a little bit less, I don't think it's as strong as something like Experiment 1. Of course, the one downside to Experiment 1, I went over in my article, a little bit more susceptible to certain removal, as well as it sort of requires other cards to be useful. But in this deck, when you're playing a creature heavy deck, it technically is always a 2/2 unless you top deck it and you have like nothing else on the board. But more often than not, it's you're able to grow it along with everything else, and sometimes it can even hit a 4/4, and by that point you're probably going to win the game regardless because of all the pumps that we have. And that's what I really wanted to try out, was have a pump heavy deck at the same time. So I'm calling this my Gruul pumps deck, I guess is what you could call it. I'll explain my reasoning with some of the pumps, but I mean, Goreclan Rampager is just a staple in these Gruul creature aggro decks, just because it's so good. Giving your creature trample plus a +4/+4 for only 2 mana is absolutely amazing. So let's get on with the deck tech, and I'll go through everything and all of my choices. So, of course, we have the 4 Experiment 1s. This is going to be your 1-drop, the main 1-drop you want to get out before everything else. What is really nice about, these things is if you have, like, Experiment 1, and then you have, like, a Burning Tree and, like, a Rakdos Cackler, you can use the 1 red mana from Burning Tree to, get out your other 1-drops. And I wanted to overload on a lot of 1-drops, and just be able to use a lot of, being able to pump threats out very, very fast, and hopefully close out the game, within four or 5 turns. We're aiming for 4-turn kill, but 5 and 6-turn kill is still fairly fast with this deck, especially with all the pumps we have. And there is a very large combo-ish deck, or combo-ish element, I guess, with this deck. And most decks that play Goreclan Rampager usually have a combo element to it. And we have 3 copies of Fire Drinker Satyr. Very solid 1-drop, and it allows you to also, if you have nothing else to use your mana on, you can pump it and give it, swing it for 3 rather than just 2. Of course, there's the downside. There are downsides, but I feel that they're, it's just overall a really good 1-drop, and it is something that also evolves Experiment 1, which is very nice. Same with Rakdos Cackler. When it comes in Unleashed, it evolves Experiment 1. So very solid 1-drop slots, and just able to get some very efficient threats out early on, and hopefully just keep them on the board or pump them to be able to fight through things and just overrun your opponent. 4 copies of Burning Tree, just to be able to combo into some of our burn. Being able to, Burning Tree Magma Jet or Burning Tree Lightning Strike is very, very good with this deck. And even, Burning Tree into, like, putting down an Experiment 1 and then Rakdos Cackler to evolve Experiment 1, you can essentially get out 3 2/2s on turn 2 if you have them in your hand, depending on how your draws went and how you wanted to play things out. But yeah, this deck can lay out a lot of lower end creatures, but you can do a lot at the same time. And because there's a lot of 1 and 2 drops, you can use your mana a little bit more efficiently, and hopefully that'll get you there. 2 copies of Ash Stillet. Because it's a double red, I didn't want to include too many. And having 2 and having that access to that haste in the first strike is very, very nice. It's almost like an extra burn spell, but at least it stays on the board. And the first strike is actually very relevant when you want to try and kill larger creatures. Like if in the off chance like Pelucranos blocks our way, we can Ash Stillet, swing into it. If he blocks, we can Lightning Strike it, and then the first strike damage will actually kill the Pelucranos before our Ash Stillet dies. So that's what I really like about playing these. A lot of tricks and stuff like that in these decks. And again, like I said in my article, I do feel tricks are very, very strong right now. Going against creature decks, it allows you to sometimes bluff damage through, or just kill off one of their creatures while trampling over for some damage. Against the Esper deck or any control decks or slower decks, really punishes people. And again, there is a large combo element to this deck as well. For our 3 drops, all we're running is 4 copies of Fanatic of Xenagos. I think this is a really sweet card in this deck. I mean, this is probably the only type of deck that you can play Fanatic of Xenagos. It's one of the better tribute cards, that's for sure. And, worst case scenario, it's a 4/4 trample for 3. Best case scenario, we get a little bit more aggressive and are able to attack with it right away. And because of all our pumps, it makes the fact that we get a haste through a lot more effective. So even like turn 4, if we play it, have a mana left over for like Titan Strength, and they decide, sure, I'll give it 4 damage for 1 turn. We can swing through, pump it, make it a 7/7 till end of turn, plus Scry. Very, very effective. Then we have 4 copies of Gore Clan. Not much to say there. Just really good, and even just as a creature, because of all our pumps, it's very nice to have 2 creatures that have trample. Like normally, it might not be great to play 4 of each, but because of all our, because of our pump spells, it really works out nicely. Being able to just keep putting damage through while taking out one of their creatures if they decide to block. Then we're running 2 copies of Zertos Wine, so this is going to be an interesting card. Again, I like having a lot of these odd test cards, because these are the types of cards that I feel really steal games. And that's one thing that I think when you're building a deck, don't be afraid to try out some of these types of cards, because they can steal games very, very easily. And, making a creature, +5, +4, and be, very, very large, especially because we already have 2 creatures with trample. If we, for example, play Fanatic of Xenagos, and later on in the game, it just gives us the ability for a combo type kill and sort of kill out of nowhere. It makes our top decks later on in the game a lot more effective as well. So like even top decking into like an Ash Zealot or something late game, like let's say they Supreme Verdict turn 4 or turn 5. The next turn we play Ash Zealot, they're tapped out, and turn 5 we'll have access to 5 mana, which we could play Ash Zealot, then Blood Rush with that, swinging for 7 on that turn. Those types of pumps are really strong, I feel. And especially because we can, use them on our other trample creatures. It means we can always get some sort of damage through. And this is why I only include 2. I mean, of course, I wouldn't want to include more than 2. It's just used for those really opportune moments. I feel this is a really good tap-out card. So really takes advantage of decks that tap out. So when they tap out, it can really punish them, which is why I want to try this card out. Not sure how it will go, but I mean, even worst case scenario, if we have to play it out, at least it's still a 5/4 that we can always pump up later on. For our non-creature spells, we're running 3 copies of Titan Strength. I didn't really want to run 4. I didn't want to get too heavy on the non-creature spells. I did really want to play a creature-heavy deck to be able to utilize the Experiment 1 Evolve triggers the most. But, I really like Titan Strength, and having the Scry, Scry is just, so amazing. And being able to give you a creature +3/+1 with the Scry, and again, since it's just a 1 mana pump, it it allows us to use our mana a lot more effectively. And we can always combine it really well with other pumps, like even like again later on in the game, if we have Zertos 1 and Titan Strength, we can give our creature +8 +5 to the end of turn, which is insane. So this is a very, I guess this is a very bursty type deck. In the first 2-3 turns, it has the ability to get 6 or so damage in, and then later on in the game, if our creatures are still there, we can pump up really, really nicely and hopefully just get out a nice, burst kill out of nowhere when they're tapped out or something like that. And the reason I do also like a lot of pumps in these decks is mainly because of cards like Jace, Architect of Thought in the control decks, because it shuts down pretty much all of these cards, or most of them at least, and minimizes a lot of the damage that we want to get through. So if we're throwing in a lot of pumps, it allows us to kill Jace out of nowhere when they least expect it, or just get through for an extra 5 or 3 damage, and really put a lot more pressure on, really force them to start digging for things rather than +1 Jace or something like that. So it's very nice, I feel. I do enjoy tricks and stuff like that. For our burns, we're running 4 copies of Lightning Strike and 3 copies of Magma Jet. I feel Magma Jet works extremely well. All these burn worked really well when we're playing cards like Burning Tree. Being able to Burning Tree turn 2 into a Magma Jet to just fix your next couple of draws. Those next turn 3 and turn 4 are very, very critical to this type of deck. And so being able to fix those draws and start digging for things you need is very, very useful. If not, and play, plus extra damage is always nice. Same with Lightning Strike. Burning Tree into Lightning Strike to kill off like one of their blockers or something like that is also very sweet. And then from Tom Ross's deck as well, he played 2 Armed and Dangerous, and I played 2 Armed and Dangerous. I wanted to play this as well over something like Flesh and Blood, because we're not really playing too many large creatures for Flesh and Blood to work. And I feel Armed combined with like Zertos Swine or Gorklan Rampager is extremely useful, and I feel has the potential to do a little bit more damage as well. And yeah, not much to say there. It does have the benefit as well of us being able to utilize both sides of the card if we need to. Like even against the creature matchups, if we have like a lot of threats on the board, but they have a couple of big blockers, and we need like one final kill, we can do Dangerous on just one of our cheap creatures and then swing in with the rest of them and not have to worry about them being able to block everything or something like that. So I think it's pretty sweet. For our land count, we're running all the dual lands in the green red. Not much to say there. And then some basics, but we are also running 2 Mutavaults. I didn't want to run more than 2 because of Ash Zealot and stuff like that. I didn't really want to, because we're only playing 21 lands, we don't want to get too screwed on mana, and we do have a pretty hefty mix of colors, so didn't really want to get screwed over in our opening hands, and I think 2 Mutavaults is perfectly fine. I mean, we're not a control deck, so we don't really need to utilize it as our own, just a threat, but it is nice to get in a little more extra damage, as well as if we do get Supreme Verdict, at least it does give us a target to actually pump, which is very, very relevant, I think, in this deck. This is another reason why I think pumps work really, really well, and being able to, late game, if they Supreme Verdict, Detention Sphere, all our guys away, if we have at least Mutavault, we can late game just activate Mutavault, attach Zertos Swine on it, swing in for 7. So very, very good against the control decks. And at least, even with Experiment 1, like I said in the article, if our curve worked out well, turn 3 and on, even if we get Supreme Verdicted, we can still keep Experiment 1 on the board, grow him back up again, and it's a threat that can still keep attacking, which is what I really like. It can be quite resilient to removal, and even with the tricks that we have, we can always, pump Experiment 1, and even if we have to remove 2 counters, normally he would lose his effectiveness to trade or win fights. So pumps allow you to actually still keep Experiment 1 quite strong in those trades or those fights, with the addition of being able to regenerate him. So yeah, that's the deck. That's the main board. Moving on to the sideboard. Oh, there we go. Got 2 copies of Destructive Revelry to take out artifacts or enchantments. Might put in Unravel the Aether instead, just be able to get rid of, cards like Thassa. However, the 2 damage can be quite relevant in this type of deck, and I feel, we want to be as aggressive as we can be, and hopefully we can just outrace those gods and things like that. 3 copies of Domri Raid for the control matchup. When they're going to be Supreme Verdicting or taking out all of our threats, we want to be able to keep pulling into threats and things like that. So Domri is really, really nice as well. I really, really like it in that sense. Also gives them another thing that they have to get rid of because that ultimate is very, very effective. 2 copies of Legion Loyalist, another card to bring in for the control matchup to combat Elspeth. We do have trample and stuff like that, but a lot of our creatures get roadblocked by Elspeth. So Legion Loyalist allows us to sort of just swing through right away for one last turn, and even playing against opposing creature matchups or things like that, the first strike can possibly come into play, which is a nice option. 2 copies of Mizzy Mortars for the black-white mid-range decks to deal with Blood Baron and things like that. I'm not overly worried about cards like Stormbreath Dragon, but it is able to hit that as well. So that's can't really complain about that. But Blood Baron is our main concern. Being able to just Burning Tree into Mizzy Mortars on the Blood Baron just to clear the way. Because again, we're playing an aggressive deck. We don't want them to gain life, so being able to kill it before we swing in, it is pretty sweet. Then we have 1 copy of Ranger's Gal just to bring in for mostly the black-white mid-range type matchups, or when they're just overloading on removal. It's just another way to make our deck a little bit more resilient to removal. Experiment 1 is pretty resilient against it by itself, but the rest of our creatures, there are going to be times where we really just can't afford to lose a threat or something like that, especially in the middle of combat when we're blood rushing and tricking and stuff like that. We want to be able to keep it on the board, so Ranger's Guile will come into play for those matchups. 3 copies of Searing Blood for opposing aggressive matchups, and even in the burn matchup, we'll bring in Searing Blood to take care of a Fire Drinker Satyr and Ash Zealot. Those are our main concerns in that matchup. So being able to get rid of that, as well as a free Lightning Strike against them, awesome. 2 copies of Skullcrack, just another thing to combo off of Burning Tree, but at the same time, again, it's used for the control matchup to stop the life gain. I like Skullcrack. It will replace 2 Lightning Strikes with it generally, just for any matchup where life gain is a large factor, and since we're playing an aggressive deck, don't really want them to gain life, so in any aggressive matchup, you'll always pretty much see Skullcrack in the sideboard for those types of matchups. But yeah, that's the deck. Very, very fun. I think it has the potential to be very, very fast, and one thing I do like about this deck is I enjoy them thinking that they're safe or something like that, and they'll tap out. We only have a 2/2 on the board, but then we Zertos Swine plus a Titan Strength on it and turn it into a 10-10, a 10-something, swing in for a lot. I just like the amount of ways we can utilize our pumps in this deck, and while still having a very creature heavy deck. We're running 27 creatures plus the 2 extra Mutavault, so 29 creatures technically. So very, very creature heavy, but at the same time does have a lot of ways to get around things or get through things at least, which is very, very nice. So that's the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed reading the article as well as watching this video. If you have any suggestions, or if you want to just discuss Experiment 1, what experiences have you had with Experiment 1, what you feel about it. Do you feel it has a place in other kinds of decks? Let me know in the comments below, or on the Rogue Deck Builder Facebook page, where I'll be posting the article and things like that. And I'll definitely get back to you, or I'll at least definitely check them out. As well as if you just have any suggestions for this deck overall, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll definitely get to those as well. But until next time, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.